The winter 2025 anime season keeps on trucking, and today, indeed, we are covering yet another power fantasy slash isekai, because of course we are. It wouldn't be an anime season without at least 5 of these. In this one, I'm going to be going over my first impressions of I'm a noble on the brink of ruin, so I might as well try mastering magic. If that title sounds very long, it is. And if that indicates a usually bad show, yes it does. Let's jump in though and explain my general thoughts on this and why I only watched 2 episodes as of the time of recording and didn't want to bother with more. First of all, I have to say, this anime is very generic from the get-go. The narratives or the storytelling and the world building in the first 2 episodes really leaves a lot, and I mean a lot, to be desired. And this anime does include many things in media that I really don't like, including the very classic X-character explains to the main character and expositions to him things he should already know, and he knows he should already know, but the main character doesn't because he's isekai'd, and of course the audience doesn't because we just started watching, yet, therefore, the show needs some way to exposition to dump all this information on us so we somewhat understand how things work, at least generally, but they can't find a good excuse for it, so they just have characters tell other characters things they already should know or have known for many years, yet they still randomly repeat it just when we are looking in on them. I can understand if that doesn't trigger you, but to me, I really don't like that. It makes me very annoyed. That is far from the only blunder, though, that this anime commits during the course of its first 2 episodes. The logical throughput here really just doesn't make sense to me on many levels. For example, our main character, who is isekai'd from the real world into this young boy's body, decides one day to learn magic, and finds out that he can actually use magic. Because magic, well, is something he likes, I suppose, and he finds it interesting, being in the fantasy world, of course. Magic in this world is somewhat rare. Being able to use magic, just in general, at all, is 1 out of 100 people being able to do so. And since the big starting plot of this anime, an underlying storyline of this anime, is that this noble family is about to cease to exist because in this world, every 3 generations, a noble family must prove themselves in some way to earn their keep, so to speak, to remain nobility or be demoted back to commoners. Yet, in this show, apparently, our main character, who finds out he can use magic, and of course everyone is delighted to hear this because that means, the noble family might actually have some way to showcase their uniqueness to stay in the nobility. None of the kids before this were tested for being able to use magic or not at all. And this boy, who was isekai'd in here just before we started watching at the age of 12, had never had his magic tested, even though we get to find out that he had the ability to use magic, the body did, meaning the non-isekai'd MC did, before he got isekai'd in here, yet no one ever tested him. That seems absolutely inconceivable that this father, this matriarch of this family, patriarch, what am I saying? Gender bending, the patriarch of this family, who is desperate to remain in the nobility, keep his family the way they are, did not for 1 second apparently decide or think it was a good idea to basically force all his 5 sons to undergo magic testing to see if they could use magic. Because if they could, as we see our MC can, that would be a big potential boon for the family and could secure their place to remain in the nobility. But apparently, no one ever bothered to check, which to me is just absolutely asinine and is illogical to the extreme. At least if the anime would have gone with the route of, well, when we tested this guy, our MC, before he was isekai'd, he couldn't use magic, or it was deemed it was too weak to use magic, or use any amount of magic that would be useful to the patriarch's aim to stay in the nobility. That would have been acceptable enough. But that he, or I assume all his brothers, were never tested is just insane. But the convenient developments do just keep coming. For example, when our MC here later in the episode is casually wandering out in the forest, practicing his magic, this apparently super powerful mage is just sitting there, very conveniently, and very conveniently also takes an interest in him when he sees him or hears him wanting to practice magic, and gives him a lot of convenient tools and knowledge and skills to move up in the magic world, so to speak, and become way stronger. This is even more convenient based on the fact that, okay, So we see later in the episode that he could just vanish, be invisible whenever he wanted to be, yet he acted as if he was caught off guard and caught when our young boy here, MC, just randomly walked in front of him and just basically surrendered himself. Yeah, do what you want with me. You know, you're part of that family, right? That wants me arrested. So why didn't he just go invisible earlier if he was thinking that this young guy being part of this noble family would have him arrested as the others in the family would? Who knows? It's just convenient. This general theme keeps just repeating itself throughout the first 2 episodes. It's clear that this show doesn't really take its narratives or story or world building too seriously. You also get vanishingly little information on the world in and of itself, aside the very generic, basic power fantasy world setting. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with the show being simple, being a bit silly, being laid back, and not having any complex structures or anything going for it, but you at least have to have some unique element to it to make it worth watching in some way or form. It further showcases just how silly it really is when the lady or young woman, whatnot, who randomly, of course, decides to be part of the same party as our MC when he tries to be an adventurer to gain his independence in this life, in this fantasy world, just very quickly thinks it's okay to become his familiar, aka his slave, because you cannot disobey your master ever, under any circumstance when you are someone's familiar. Just thinks that lifelong, very intense commitment is just totally fine out of the blue. Well, I mean, if I can get stronger, sure, it's fine if I can't disobey you, literally ever, for any reason. And, you know, I trust you not to do any weird, etchy stuff to me, but if you do, that's fine too. That would be okay for me, as she says. Which is to me like, okay, dude, I get you want to be silly, but you can at least pretend that this is a serious, life-altering decision, as it is effectively slavery. They also, of course, just pretend that she is now his waifu, even though we have had literally 0 romantic development between the two at all in the first 2 episodes. This gets even more silly and borderline retarded when a friend of hers, who doesn't even know this guy, our MC, also decides to take this lifelong commitment of being a familiar, aka slave, because she might get stronger. I mean, again, come on, just at least pretend that this is a difficult, hard decision. At least pretend to explore the philosophical conundrums, the moral dilemmas of our MC, basically owning these human beings, being able to force them to do anything he wants without them being ever in any way able to disobey. But no, it's just treated as, well, I guess that's happening. Again, as I said, that goes back to this being a laid-back, chill, more silly, fun, you know, very generic, standard isekai power fantasy anime. But when you do that, you need to have something unique accompany it, which this anime really kind of doesn't so far after the first 2 episodes. Before we get into that, though, to end off the video, do please remember to like and subscribe if you are enjoying it, as it greatly helps out the channel, so thank you for your support. Now, as I said, if you're gonna do this sort of thing, you need to have some unique thing about the anime that makes it fun to watch, or interesting, or entertaining, or engaging. But sadly, at least to me, this anime really doesn't. None of the supporting cast really intrigues me. The waifus are very mediocre, basic. I don't really like any of them so far at all. Nothing story-wise or narrative-wise in the story keeps me interested so far. And the main character himself is very uninteresting and generic himself also. What that means is that this show basically has no unique elements to it, or no unique drives to it, which makes it, well, very uninteresting to watch. And if you just want some very basic drivel to watch in the background, where you don't really have to engage your brain at all, or you don't really have to think too much about it all, then sure, this show is acceptable, I suppose. But without a single unique element to it, it just feels incredibly lackluster and not something you really want to keep on watching past the first few episodes, really. This also feels like another isekai anime, which in reality is isekai in name only. Of course, this is me referring to many isekai at this point, where they only tag on the isekai title and have this reincarnation theme in the anime just to have it in the anime. It doesn't have any impact on anything in the anime, and in the first episodes, our boy being isekai'd into this young boy's body seems to have had no impact on the story at all. Maybe it will during the course of the rest of the season, but it doesn't really look like it to me, which is, again, a wasted ton of potential that they could have done something with. To me, though, more than simply the anime being generic, being basic, and being very lackluster in most every way. What annoys me even more than that is the potential that remains unrealized. Because to me, I think the concept in and of itself of a noble family in this fantasy world being in decline, almost ceasing to exist in this generation because of this need to accomplish something to remain in the nobility, could be super interesting. Like, think of the conflicts between, the head of the family and the sons, and the pressure and the family dynamics, especially having 5 sons and then now 1 daughter, and how all of these things could be really explored and fleshed out. The conflicts between family members and between the family members and the outer world, plotting, scheming, pushing one's selves to achieve this goal, to remain in the nobility, different personality types in the family. Like, there are so many potential interesting things you can do with this concept, but this anime doesn't even scratch the surface at all of this in the first few episodes, and I heavily doubt they ever will during the course of the rest of season 1. In the end though, this anime, to me, is just uninteresting. That's it. It's not offensively bad. It's not terrible beyond redemption. It's just generic. If you are open to watching a generic anime, or more specifically, a generic power fantasy anime that really doesn't have anything going for it, no amazing animation, no amazing fights, no amazing waifus, not specifically especially funny or interesting main character, and a very generic storyline, then yeah, you might get some value out of this, just having it on in the background as some simple brain-dead thing you can enjoy after a hard day of work or something. But if you're actually expecting anything of value out of this anime, then I don't think you will find it whatsoever, sadly. Which is also why I don't know when I will actually keep watching this anime, because it's just so lackluster. It really takes a lot of motivation to keep watching going forward. Anyhow though, what are your thoughts on this anime? If you have watched it already, like it, hate it, leave all those thoughts down below. And of course, if you liked the video, please remember to like and subscribe. It greatly helps out the channel, so thank you. If you want to be extra supportive, do check out my Patreon in the description below and become a member. Would greatly appreciate that, so thank you. That being said, hope you have a nice day, keep watching anime, maybe not this one though, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.